chapter 3. For the entire semester, we're going to continue working through the accounting cycle. It will take us several more chapters to complete the cycle. We're going to cover journalizing today, posting, which will be the most cumbersome and time-consuming thing that you have to do, and then preparing the trial balance. What accounts go on the trial balance? The trial balance. All of them. Right? It just gives us a chance to make sure that our debits and credits equal after we do all of our transactions. So all of the accounts go on the trial balance. It's not a formal statement, it doesn't have dollar signs on it, and it has a specific date. When we talk about the accounting cycle, it's a certain period of time. In our book, a lot of our fiscal periods are going to be just for a month. Some of the financial statements we would only prepare at the end of the year. We're not going to do all of them every month, but we can't continue working on the problem through 12 months and then try to do the end of the accounting cycle's documents that we need to do. So a lot of ours go from month to month. When we talk about a fiscal year, it's any year end that we decide with our business. It doesn't have to be the calendar year, January to December. If we were a retail store and our year ended in December, would that be a smart move for us?
Yeah, put all the Christmas sales.
Well, we can, but that's also probably our busiest time, isn't it? And what happens in January after all of those Christmas sales? Returns. But what are people doing after Christmas? A lot of returning things, or maybe spending their gift cards. So we're still busy. So the end of our year, if we were a retail store, having it end in December might not be a good time. Maybe having it end after spring break, because retailers also have a busy time around the Easter holiday, don't they? So we might want to have our year end sometime, maybe May. I don't know. Does anybody work retail? When's HEB's end of the year?
March.
Is it March? Okay, before spring break probably.
I work at Walgreens. I believe our fiscal year ends in like June.
In June. So you try to pick a time that's not so busy, so that you have the end of your business year. And it doesn't matter what you pick, but once you select it, then you can't change it. So if we say it's going to always be June, then it's always June. So there's a difference between the calendar year and the end of the fiscal year, which will be whatever year end you choose, depending on what type of business we are. The accounting period is for a certain amount of time. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, annually. You could do it semi-annually, called a natural business year, and it's usually at the slowest time of the year. I have a small business myself, and I only do my reports annually. I don't do mine monthly. So it depends on how much income you have as to whether you need to do something monthly, quarterly, or at the year end. Those reports, monthly and quarterly, are called interim reports. When we start using the journal, it's a list of all of our transactions listed in chronological order. What does that mean, chronological order? By time. And in accounting, we wouldn't say that it happened on a Monday. What would we say it happened on? And some of our transactions have already been listed that way. May 1st, May 3rd, May 5th. And we'll list them in order, okay, in chronological order. So if we're working on May, we would have May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd, all the way up to how many days are in May? 31, right? I might ask you that on the test. It's usually called the Book of Original Entry. Have you ever seen an old journal from, 100 years ago, an old hardware store or a merchandise store, mercantile store, a general store, where it's written in handwriting, really pretty cursive writing? I have some pictures of old journals. Everything that happened in the business was written down there. If someone was extended credit, it was written in that journal. And that would be our accounts receivable, right? We'd know how much that person owed us. So it's usually called the Book of Original Entry. It's where we write everything down. This book only uses the general journal. In some of your other accounting classes, you'll see some other journals. There can be a cash receipts journal, which would be all of the cash that we're bringing in, a cash payments, which would look like your check register. But this book doesn't use any special journals. It just uses the general journal. So that's what we're going to use. It's the simplest form of the journal. Everything's located in one place. After we record it in the journal, then we're going to transfer it to the ledger. And in the ledger, each one of our accounts has a separate, what we'll call a page. And I told you about the posting machine at the bank where I was a very long time ago, where we actually pulled the ledger sheets out of the file cabinet, put it in the posting machine, post it on that ledger page, put it back into the file cabinet, pulled out the next one, put it in, posted it on that, and put it back in. We actually filed checks at that bank by signature. We didn't have account numbers. That's how long ago that was. That was a very long time ago. And we recognized people's signatures. It was a small town bank in Virginia. So nowadays, I don't think anybody even touches your checks, let alone processing your checks or filing them by hand. One of my very first jobs was I was a check filer at a bank, at Bigger Bank in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and we had file cabinets that were just like these desks in here that they rotated, and the drawers were just full of checks. So the account numbers were on the individual files, and we would file the checks. We'd roll back and forth, push the button, roll up to the next item. I mean, that was my job. I was a check filer. And back then, you got your checks in the mail with your bank statement. Now the banks use truncation. They don't send you your checks anymore. So the banking industry has changed a lot. I don't know why they still can't give you instant credit. They take it out of your check instantaneously, don't they? But they can't give you instant credit when you make a deposit. But that was another one of the things that we did, was that we filed those checks. Now you just get a statement that says what checks were paid. You have to determine which ones are still outstanding. The chart of accounts is the same as the one that we looked at in Chapter 2. Assets start with the 100s, liabilities 2. The equity, owner's equity, start with the 3, revenue 4, and expenses 5. Now that could be 5,000, 500, or we could have started with 50. Most of the accounts, like your expense accounts, I would have listed those in alphabetic order. This book does not think that that's important. And I would have left some numbers in between those accounts so I could add other accounts in there if I needed to. Right now, we can't. We've got, it starts with 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in the expenses. We couldn't add another account there. The assets are listed in order of liquidity. Which ones we can turn into cash first? Usually cash, petty cash, accounts receivable, supplies is how that's usually listed. Okay. Here's some of the rules for recording in the journal. The debit's going to go first, the credit's going to go second and indented, and we'll write an explanation. When you write the explanation, I want you to think, will I remember 6 months from now why I recorded that transaction? Will I remember 1 year from now when there's an auditor standing over my shoulder asking Kimberly, why did you record that transaction? Make a clear description. Skip a line, and there's enough lines in the journal for each one of the problems to skip a line. It makes it a little easier for me to grade. It also gives you an extra line if you make a mistake, so you can put it in. So skip a line. And remember, the debits and credits should always equal, added up for each transaction. Make sure you have a debit and a credit. And we have to use at least 2 accounts. If we use more than 2, it's called a compound entry. Let's look at the first transaction. Brenda Clark began the business by investing $10,000 in cash into the business. Here's what it's going to look like in the journal. The date first, and we have the month. We have a little space over to the left that we're not going to use. That right under the date, you'll put the month and the year, and you only need to write the month 1 time. You don't have to write that again on that page. And then it was the first. It said that Brenda Clark invested $10,000 into the company. We know that cash is our debit on that one because we have memorized cash. We've increased cash. Did we increase or decrease Brenda Clark common capital? We increased because its normal balance is where? On the credit side. Notice how we indented Brenda Clark capital. The description does not need to be indented. I think whoever prepared these slides didn't really know much about accounting, and they made it like stair-step looking. I really like the description back over to the left. And does it have to be worded exactly like that? No. How else could you word that? Investment by owner. Cash investment by owner. Right? So it doesn't have to be exactly like mine or exactly like the one in the book. And you can usually pull out some of the words from how the transaction is worded. Right? And it can go back over to the left. The only one I really need to see indented is the credit. And then we have enough space to skip a line. There's the month, there's the day, there's the debit, there's the credit, the explanation or description. If it's missing, I usually say description. There's the debit and there's the credit. Now that PR column, does anybody know what that's called? The post-reference column. I do not want anything in that column until we post. So don't feel like, oh, I'm going to be so efficient and I'm going to put that 110 in there for cash right now. No, don't do that. That tells you that you've already posted that and we haven't posted yet. So don't try to work ahead and put a number in there. We don't put that in there until we finish posted. Let's look at the next transaction. Purchase word processing equipment from Ben Company for $6,000, paying $1,000 and promising to pay the balance in 30 days. What kind of an entry are we going to have? It's going to be a compound entry, isn't it? Because it's more than 2 accounts. What's affected here? Equipment, word processing equipment. Cash.
Accounts payable.
And accounts payable. Okay, so we have 3. So let's look at what it's going to look like. We've skipped a line. We didn't have to write May again because it's already up on the top line. It's the first. Word processing equipment. How do we know that that's the actual name of that account, word processing equipment? Where can we look? It's not always in there exactly like the accounts listed though. Go back to the chart of accounts. Most of your problems will give you a chart of accounts. If it doesn't, then you'll just have to guess what that account might be. But usually it gives you a chart of accounts. So word processing equipment should have been listed under the assets. And notice how it's listed. Capital W, capital P, capital E. That's how it was on the chart of accounts. Then we have a credit to cash and a credit to accounts payable. Now, right now, they told us that that was Ben Company, didn't they? Eventually, and you can do this now, we're going to write a diagonal here and put Ben Company. If you want to go ahead and get into the habit of doing it now, do it in this chapter. If they give us the company, we can go ahead and list it. This transaction, this line right here, will actually be posted twice. Once to accounts payable, which is a controlling account, and once to Ben Company. So you can get into the habit now, diagonal, Ben Company, and we'll put a diagonal in the post reference as we're posting it twice. If you don't do it in this chapter, you'll do it eventually, but some of you might want to go ahead and get into the habit of doing it now. Our description could come back over here. Is that a fairly good description? Would we need then equipment in the description if we had it up here? We wouldn't need it there. So if you'd use your diagonal and put Ben Company up here, we could just say purchased equipment. Or equipment purchase. Questions? I see puzzled faces.
So anytime it said accounts payable, and I want to get in the habit of putting what it's payable for, is that what you're saying with the diagonal?
We're going to eventually post it to Ben Company and to accounts payable. I think the author thought it was too much to throw into this chapter, but some of you are probably thinking, how do we even know that that's Ben Company? Well, let's put it in there. So if you want to, you can start in chapter 3, diagonal Ben Company, and then your description could just be equipment purchase.
Why do you do a diagonal instead of just putting it in parentheses?
Because we're posting it twice. And that's why I want the diagonal here. We'll have the account number for accounts payable here above the diagonal and a check mark down here. Because accounts payable accounts don't have account numbers in this book. And we post it twice. And when we get ready to post, sometimes I just have you post the ones that have the diagonal. Because I don't want to take time in class to post. It just takes up too much time. It takes a lot of your time to post. Jennifer.
What do you mean we're posting it twice though?
Well, it's a couple chapters away, but accounts payable is a controlling account. Accounts payable is going to have Ben Company, could be another company that starts with a C, another company that starts with a D, another company that starts with an E. We could have 10 accounts that we owe money to. Right now, if we look in accounts payable and we want to know how much we owe to Ben Company, we'll have to look at all of the transactions that we've posted. So we'll be posting it to the subsidiary ledger and the controlling account. So that's the twice. Okay, any other questions? And maybe I'll answer some of them as we go on. So do you have to use the diagonal now? But some of you probably will go ahead and start it because you'll know, I have to post that twice eventually. Let's get into that habit. Are we in balance? Debits and credits equal. Add them up before you go to the next one. What are we going to do next?
Skip a line.
Skip a line, okay. All right, that was a compound entry. Only the day is entered. I already pointed that out. Okay, May 1st again. Rented office space paying $1,200 in advance for the first 3 months. How much is each month's rent worth? $400. Okay, how are we going to record that? We paid for it, didn't we? Prepaid rent. And if you look at your chart of accounts, we had an account, prepaid rent. And then, what did we do to cash? Debit or credit? Credit. So that's what our transaction looks like. We didn't have to ask ourselves what accounts are affected, what's their category, increase or decrease, debit or credit, because cash was involved. Cash is our credit, the other account has to be our debit. What kind of a transaction is this one? A shifting assets. We decreased cash, we increased prepaid rent. Is the description good enough? I would put the number of months so that you know when you get ready to make the adjusting entry later on, we'll know how much each month was. All right? What are we going to do next? Skip a line. Okay.
In the book, it's mentioned that the prepaid rent is an asset until it comes due.
Right.
And that's because, let's say your lease is up in that time and you say, you know what, we're just going to do it, you get that cash back.
No, we always have the cash paid out, but we'll expense it. And we're going to decrease that asset, prepaid rent. So we said the $400 was going to be the amount for each month on this. That was a good question. What do we do at the end? It's jumping ahead a little bit, but at the end of the fiscal period, because we want to match revenue and expenses, if we show this as an expense, $1,200 in May, that was for May, June, and July, wasn't it? What happens to July?
It goes down by $400 since
It's going to have to come down by $400 each month, isn't it? Right now, if we expense this all in May, it looks like we had too much expense in May, so it's going to cut down on our revenue.
A lot of rent.
Right, so we'll have to make an adjusting entry. That's several chapters away, but we'll do that. All right, right now we're just paying for it. And we'll expense it later. The cash is gone, isn't it? We've already spent the cash. And maybe there was a discount to pay it 3 months ahead. If you've got a good cash flow and you have some cash in your account, you might take advantage of that. If you didn't have enough, maybe you couldn't pay the 3 months. But sometimes you have to pay the first month, the last month, and then the actual month. So that could have been the 3 months. We might not ever be able to expense that last month's until we can count that as our last month's rent. It's like our security deposit. The money's still tied up. All right, the next transaction is on the 3rd. Purchased office supplies from Norris Company on account. What accounts are affected? Office supplies and accounts payable. Right, office supplies, accounts payable. Again, we're going to eventually post it twice, so you could write Norris Company up here if you wanted to, and not include it in the description, because it's up here on this line. This is one of our suppliers. And we'll put the diagonal over here also, because we'll eventually post that twice. Manuel, do you have a question?
You don't have what it looks like completed with the diagonal and all that? Finished product we're eventually gonna do it, it looks make it a little easier to see it.
What's that? Just see the diagonal?
Yeah, the way you want it, we're eventually.
Oh, you'll see it on my
If you
demo
see an example
problem.
of that, then we'll be like, oh, I-
You'll see it on my demo
Okay,
problem.
that's all.
They just wait a little bit to show you that.
I was trying to understand, I was trying to see what you're saying, but I can't.
I don't want to draw it on the board, because then it will be pink in the middle. Okay.
Okay.
But you'll see it on my demo. We'll probably do the demo on Thursday. Are we okay with that one? On this one, you might have had to ask yourselves what accounts are affected, what's the category, increase or decrease, debit or credit. But you should get into the habit of the assets. This one we increased, office supplies. It's an asset, it works like cash. That one had to be our debit. May the 7th, completed sales promotion pieces for a client and immediately collected $3,000. Cash and, what was our revenue account called? Was it word processing fees? All right, so here's what it looks like. Cash is our debit. The credit is indented. It's our revenue. Word processing fees. Is that what it was called, word processing fees? $3,000. And then the description. An okay description. Could it just say receipts for services rendered? Because it shows that we received cash. So it doesn't have to be worded just like this one or the book. On the 13th, we paid office salaries, $650. Paid cash, what did we do the cash, debit or credit? A credit, what's our debit going to be? Okay, there's our chart of account, we'll have to go back to it. Because we could have another salaries expense too, do we? On the chart of accounts, I don't remember. Did we just have office salaries? But we could also have sales salaries expense. We had someone that was doing sales. So here's just office salaries expense, credit of cash, and then payment of office salaries. Could you just say paid office salaries? So you can see how the wording of the description could be a little different. On the 18th, advertising bill from Al's News Company comes in, but is not paid, $250. What account is going to be used if we're not paying it right now? Accounts payable. What accounts are affected then? Advertising expense and accounts payable. Which one would be our debit? Advertising expense. Advertising expense, all expenses have a normal balance on what side? On the left, so it's the debit. So on some of them, you may not have to ask all of those questions. What accounts are affected? We always need to ask that one. What accounts are affected? On the test, you could highlight or draw a circle around the accounts that you think you're going to be using as you're reading the description. Here's what it's going to look like: advertising expense, accounts payable. We could put our diagonal and Al's News right there instead of putting it in the description. Bill in but not paid. I probably would have said received bill, not paid. Put a semicolon in there. But in any description, it doesn't have to be like this one. Just want to know a year from now why you recorded that transaction. On the 20th, Brenda Clark wrote a check on the bank account of the business to pay her home mortgage payment. Can she do that? She can, but it's not an expense of the business. We have to put it under the withdrawals. What would cash be in that transaction, a debit or a credit? The credit. So the debit's going to be Brenda Clark, comma, withdrawal, and then cash is our credit. Now, Brenda signed that check. I'm not sure whether you need any more of a description here. Maybe the check number. If there's an auditor hanging over you asking, why did you pay the personal bill for, or they're just looking at the check and it's made out to the mortgage company and it's not for the business. If you had the check number there, then you could reference that. Right, it came out of the business, but we charged it against her withdrawal account.
So what do you do with the receipts?
Well, you'll just have to have a good filing system. Some of it could be electronic. The question was, what do you do with your receipts? Every year, you know what a paper box looks like? I have a paper box of receipts. I save all of my receipts because if it's for my business, I need the receipt. If it's something that I've mailed, I need the receipt. Sometimes I'm good about sorting it by month or putting it into a special envelope that it's for my business. Sometimes I'm not. You get in a hurry. And then at the end of the year or before April 15th, we're trying to gather everything up. I don't throw anything away. I'm bad. I think I probably have 25 paper boxes in my attic full of 25 tax returns and all the receipts. What do you do with them? My social security number is on things from 25 years ago. What do you do with them? I can't put them in the trash. Every once in a while they have a shredding day and you can take them there, but I don't want to break my shredder shredding 25 years worth of stuff. So I'm hoarding them. I don't know, what do you do with them? How many years do you need to keep? 7 or 8. But then what do you do with them? You hear these horror stories on the news where offices have, purged their files and people's social security numbers are on there. A real horror story is when I was at Virginia Tech, my ID number was my social security number, and my license number in the state of Virginia was my social security number. So how secure was that? Now everybody wants to keep that a secret. If you search hard enough, you probably can find it.
I've personally evolved into this horrible habit of doing the exact same thing, working way beyond the required filing date. I personally packed an entire U-Haul full of old documents we didn't need to hand over anymore. It had that U-Haul shipped to a document sharing service we used.
Yeah.
But, it piles up.
It does. And you have to take it. I wouldn't want to take it someplace and leave it. I'd want to watch it be shredded. And that's just being a little paranoid. But I don't want that information out there. When I was going through some of my mother's files when she died, she had some tax returns from my grandfather and that were done in pencil that he had calculated his tax return. Now, of course, it had his social security number and how much he had made, which wasn't very much at all. Those are treasures now. Maybe somebody will like to look at mine 100 years from now. I don't know. But it does become a problem. What do you do with them? So if you're a business, the hardware store where I worked, we kept lots of things up in the attic. At the bank where I worked, we did a lot of microfilming. They still do microfilming at the banks to purge some of the paper items. I don't know. I think the paper, do we always, or is always having a digital copy of something a secure way of keeping it?
No, it's
No.
gonna be
How many digital copies and what means?
I know.
Those become very complicated questions.
So what do? I was going through one of my drawers the other day, and we're now depositing my checks where you take a picture of it and just deposit it at home. So now I have all these checks made out to me that my husband has put a little check mark on that he's deposited in my account. But what do I do with those checks now? Do I just throw them away? Do I shred them? Do I put them in my paper box for the year? I don't know. Would it ever come back that I need to have that check? I don't know. I mean, that's right. Who knows? So I've become this really strange hoarder of documents. You know, I have files in my office of old semesters of papers. How far back can a student go to say, I want to know why I got this grade in your class? I have my grade book, I have my final grade, but how long do I have to keep your papers?
Come back to you.
I don't know. I don't know how far back you can go. I don't know that it's ever been determined. I mean, I need to keep my grade book probably forever, but is just a digital file of that grade enough? I don't know. Lots of good questions. Accounting forensics is the up-and-coming field. So you might want to get involved. Accounting forensics.
Is that tracking embezzlement? Fraud?
White-collar crime.
Yeah.
It's just too easy to embezzle the white-collar crime. And it's too easy with cash. Okay? On the 22nd, we billed Morris Company for a sophisticated word processing job, $5,000. Did we receive cash? We have a promise to receive payment, though. So what accounts are affected? Accounts receivable and our revenue account. Accounts receivable is our debit. Word processing fees, $5,000, and then our description. If we're using the diagonal, we could put Morris Company up there on the accounts receivable line. May 27th, paid office salaries again. We already did one like that. On the 28th, paid half the amount owed for word processing equipment May 1st. From Ben Company, we paid cash. Cash is our credit, accounts payable. How do we know that half was $2,500 if they didn't give us the amount? We'd have to go to the original transaction, wouldn't we? And later on, we'll get real detailed about what the terms were of that sale, whether there was a discount period, whether there was an interest charged. So we'll have a little bit more detail later on. On the 29th, received and paid the telephone bill, telephone expense, and then cash. If we don't have an account called telephone, expense, where could we put it? Utilities. Some of our companies will have telephone expense and some of them won't. Transferring the information from the journal to the ledger. There's several different steps. I like to work from the left over to the right, and I think we can look at it better in the picture. Mine's just a little different in the steps that I like for you to do. I like for you to start over to the left. So here's our journal. Once we finish, we're going to transfer that information to the specific account. This one is cash. So we would post to cash. We would also post to Brenda Clark Capital. Let's look at the cash one. May and the year and the day. We don't need to write anything in the explanation. You can leave that blank. Later on, we'll use this for some more detail for other things, but right now we don't have to write anything there. In the post-reference column on the ledger, we're going to show where it came from. It came from the general journal. And what page was it? Okay. General Journal 1. And it was a debit. And then if you'll look over to the right, we have two columns that say balance. So now when we go to the ledger, we can know immediately what the balance is in that account. Let's say our next transaction was $4,000 as a payment in cash, and we have it right here. What would our number be right here then, if we have 4,000 here? No, we have a credit of 4,000. 6,000. Right, so the balance on that first one, we have to just bring the number over because it's the only transaction that's there. But if the next one is a payment and we made a payment of $4,000, we recorded it as a credit, our new balance then in cash would be 6,000. So this is a running total. If you have a checking account, you probably keep a running balance of how you've used your debit card, or if you've written a check. It's sort of the same way. And it will say balance. You'll see that the lines go all the way up to the top to keep it separate, but we have a debit and a credit. Could we ever have a credit balance in cash? Could, but we wouldn't want to for very long. But if there's a couple of transactions that occurred on the same day, and then we made a deposit, it might run into the credit for a while. So whichever number we have the most of, that's going to determine whether it's a debit or a credit. So 4,000 as a credit, we'd have a balance on the debit side of 6,000. So we'll write the amount, we'll calculate the new balance, and then the last thing we're going to do is to take this account number and bring it back to the general journal that we posted it. That's the only time you're going to write that account number in the journal. Don't get ahead of yourself. I usually make you all promise me that you will never, ever, ever, ever write the numbers, the account numbers, in the post-reference column on the journal until you post. Let's say we're in the middle of a problem, or you're doing your homework in the middle of posting a problem that has 20 transactions and you have to stop. You thought you were going to sit there and be able to finish it, and you've written all the account numbers down. Do you know which one you posted and which one you didn't? No. So only write the number in the journal after you've posted. Have we posted to Brenda Clark Capital? Yes. A couple of my assignments will have the post reference column on it, but maybe you're not posting for me, and if you have the numbers in there, you're getting points taken off. You only put those numbers there after you post. Promise? Promise? I promise, right? Okay. So let's go through those steps one more time. From the journal into the ledger, and we'll just start at the top, and we'll work our way down chronologically through all of those transactions. Does it take a lot of time? It does. In class, I try to speed it up. That's why sometimes I'll say, only post the ones that have the diagonal, so we can quickly get through the demo.
Once you put it on a journal, it's considered posting. Once you put it on the journal.
Once you put it in the ledger, it's
Oh, the
posted.
ledger.
Mhm. So let's look at it again. The green is the journal. The green is the book of original entry. The green will look like, is there a good picture in the book of the journal page that, oh yes. Look on page 89 in the book, or 88. And you can see all those transactions in the journal. Have we posted the ones on page 88?
No.
All of them.
No. Have we posted?
No.
No. Can you find one that shows that we've posted? Look at page 89. Have we posted the ones at the bottom? Yes. Do you see the difference? You know that we posted. So here's the steps again. The journal's the green part up at the top. We've recorded everything for the month. Realistically, you would post after each transaction, but we usually list all of our entries in the journal and then we post. But when you're in Peachtree, which is the computerized accounting system, as soon as you hit the enter key to record that transaction in the journal, it posts it. So if we wanted to know how much cash we had on a specific day, and we waited until the end of the month to post, that wouldn't be realistic, would it? So in the real world, you probably post every day as you're recording the transactions. Just like that old-timey posting machine where we pulled the ledger pages out and put it into the posting machine. We posted every day, or we had to stay until we balanced. But here, we usually post when we finished with the month. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to start with the first one, it's cash. We're going to find the ledger page that says cash. Here's the account name, and there's the account number over on the right, 111. The date, the post reference column, and where does this come from? GJ1, General Journal, page 1. Could be GJ2, GJ3, GJ4, whatever page number it is. Then record the amount, calculate the new balance, and then the last thing you do is to take the account number for the ledger page and put it on the journal. That is called cross-referencing. You can look at this, the ledger page, and say it came from page 1. You can look at this and say that we posted it with account number 111. This one we posted with account number 311. Cross-referencing, new term, posting. I just went over what the cross-referencing is. It leaves a trail for us to tell us where we put things. When we're finished posting, then we'll run a trial balance just to make sure that our debits and credits equal. It's all of the accounts. It tells us whether it's correct. We might have somebody in here the other day was off $90 or $9, and I said you've probably transposed a number. If you've switched a number around and it should have been $9 and you recorded 90, what's the difference between those two numbers? 81. A transposition is divisible by 9. So if you're off $90, 9 cents, $81, $72, $720, it's a transposition. So go back and look at your numbers just to see that you recorded everything correctly. Do the trial balance after you finish the journal. You can do a total on your journal, on your calculator, but don't put a total number at the bottom of your page. We don't usually total the journal page. Here's just a trial balance. We did it at the end of the month. We listed all of our accounts. It's in the same order. You have an extra column over here if you want to write the account numbers. You may do that. And it just tells you that your debits and credits equal. Single line tells you that you're adding or subtracting. Double line tells you that it's a total. What do you do if it doesn't balance? I hope you don't have to do this. You have to find your mistake. Now you can send me a picture. I can't get this to balance, and cry about it. And then I'll look at my answer key and say, check your cash or check your transaction here. Don't be afraid to send it to me and say, I've tried everything. I just can't get it to work. The only thing I don't like to hear is, I don't get it. Because I try to give you just a little bit at a time so that it's not too overwhelming, although I know we're covering a lot of material. Hopefully some of it's sinking in though, isn't it? Okay. If you can divide it by 2, maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe something's on the wrong side. So if you're off $500, maybe really it's $250 that you're looking for, and you put it on the debit side twice. So you'll get good at finding your mistakes. Sometimes I can just look at your work and say, oh, this is what it is. But I've been doing it a long time, and sometimes I've worked that problem too. So, and other people have probably made the same mistake. So don't be afraid to ask me if it doesn't come out, okay? What to do if your trial balance, there's the 9. And then they talk about how to make corrections. We're using pencil in here, so I want you to make a correction by erasing it. Even if you've posted it, I want you to erase it. But in the real world of accounting, you couldn't do that. You'd have to make a correcting entry. That's where the T accounts would come in handy, to write down the original entry, what you need to do to fix it. Okay? There's what they want you to do. No, I want you just to erase it. Erase it, fix it, make it correct. You have an extra line in between each one of the journal entries, so if you left off an account, you've got a place to put it. If you left one out, do you have to erase the whole thing? No, just draw a line, put it at the bottom, tell me that I need to go down there to look at it. All right, I'm pretty lenient with what your homework papers look like. I want you to have everything correct, but you don't have to erase the entire thing if you found that you left one out. Could you put a little check mark as you work through each one of the transactions? Use a pencil, put a check mark in there. Chances are you're going to keep this book because this is just a good foundation for your other accounting classes. All right, and then that's how they want you to change it with your number. I just want you to erase. I think that looks messy. And you can do that as long as you haven't posted. There they've made a correcting entry. I'm just going to say don't make any mistakes. All right, summary of the chapter. That's all at the back of the chapter. All right. Questions? Will you turn that off?